Why would you do that to yourself? That's awful. What kind of music? Just sing one. What? There are no songs in hardcore? We just make them up. Are there like aggressive body movements?
Yeah.
Like, wait, you go to like a boxing show or like
No, there was people boxing.
And they do cartwheels too.
No, yeah, the one of the hands brought gloves.
Seriously?
Yeah.
hello?
I've never been there.
It's the first time.
There's steak over there.
Oh. So what is wrong with you? No, not you. No, no, the person behind you. Joey, could you maybe move a little this way or that way so I could? And?
We have the best hardcore scene in like the entire world in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is better than
Yeah.
Colin, do you know what? You know, I take everything back about Ryan and what was her name? Dimitri? Claudia? Claudia. Nadia. Yeah, Lark is, hardcore stuff. It doesn't go well with your culture. Ah, come on. Hello? How are you?
Well.
Did you get married? You make it sound as if it's something bad. It is, but that's besides the point.
23, yeah, probably.
23? People get married like when they're 18.
I was married at 23.
See? Danielle, what's going on, man?
More than usual. Else wants us to
Yeah. I ordered some stuff from Home Depot yesterday. Just to let you know. You were saying, I'm sorry. You said you went to some like place and you listened to some bad music and you saw some like awful looking people. What is it with young people, Tammy? Are they just not educatable? Is it most of them? Like 95, 96%? So do you and I just sit back and suffer through it? We have no choice, huh? How miserable life is. Adrian? So, anything new with any of you before we go home? You don't need to take notes on that. Joey, anything? Tolstoy. You've heard the name, Tolstoy? Not Toy Store. Tolstoy. Some Russian guy was kind of sad and depressed most of his life. I think eventually I don't know if he died a natural death or he died because of his servants. But at any rate, he had mentioned that art needs to be educative. Is it true? If you were to call me last night, for example, and you and I would go to this show, how do you think it would impact me?
Sorry.
I mean, you should know I have a very weak heart. Okay?
Music is highly political, so it's like, it is educative in that sense. There is like,
I mean, Nelson Mandela is political.
There's also an emotional aspect. Like, think art has to kind of provoke emotions.
And
Well, I'm listening to you, and emotions are
It's so
coming.
community based, like these shows, like everyone's family there.
Oh, that's why America is so intact. What?
What is it?
Yeah, I think that's the reason why America is so like intact and family oriented because of hardcore music like this. Actually, I didn't know
think
that.
If there were more hardcore shows, we'd be so much like tighter as a community.
Like 90-year-olds holding hands coming to these hardcore shows.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I think
there's like a,
There are. I think it's any type of music because everyone in that venue, they all like have a communal interest.
Yeah.
So everyone there already has something in common, and then
Yeah.
they're all just
They know what's going on.
What is going on?
like
Music, art,
The what?
art, like the music is just happening. Like having a time.
Having a what?
Having a time. You're just like,
Having a time?
yeah.
and the ambulance gets called at least once every time.
Mine was fine.
Okay, mine are. Mine are.
Do you go there, Colin? So you don't want to have a time? Is that what you said? Have a time? You don't want to have a time?
You don't have to be like in
You
the
don't have to be
pit.
moshing.
You can like stand in the back and like just listen. Enjoy.
I never understand.
Yeah. There is so much I haven't done. I feel like you and I have both missed out on some very important things in life. So would you be okay if your daughter was to go there?
If I had kids, I would take them.
Like she was like 5?
Yeah, they're like really good with kids.
Who is?
Like the community people at shows.
How about their eardrums?
Huh?
Is the music loud?
Yeah. I mean, you have ear protection.
What?
Ear protection.
No, because you see kids with like these huge construction ear protection.
So you go there not to hear music.
No, we pretty much go there to mosh. To the dance. So.
Tammy, I think you and I should stay out of this. Well, thank you. That was very educational. You guys. Amon, anything we could talk about that's interesting? Oh, you're going to Japan. Wait, you went or you're going to? Already?
How many days did you go?
You went there for what? Music? What is it with you people? Did you go there for the same kind of music?
No.
Was it worse? Was it better? Well, sing us like,
We played a song in class, remember?
what?
We played a song in class by the band.
Oh, that sucked. Yeah, I remember that. Awful music. I mean, I'm glad you enjoy it, but you know what I think your guys' problem is? It's something that Tammy and I know really well. It's called diet. You know, you get to a certain point in life, you go for a regular checkup and they say, well, your cholesterol is bad and your blood pressure is bad and then sugar, everything. So, is there anything that's good about me? No, you're almost dead. What do I need to do? Well, don't eat this and don't eat that. When you're young, you can eat all sorts of junk. And by eating, I just don't mean through your mouth. You can listen to junk, read junk, hang out with junk, talk junk, just be junk. As you get a little older and you realize that everything about you is like going down or going up in all the wrong ways, then you realize, well, I like this guy because of this music, but I hate this music now, or I hate the guy now. And then slowly you go on this diet. Before you know it, there's nothing out there that you can enjoy. Now that is a good place to be in life. But when you're young, what can you do? You just eat junk food all the time. That's just the way the kids are. So good luck to you all. So Daniel, anything we should talk about that's interesting?
That's what I'm wondering. I don't have an answer for you.
What were you wondering?
If there's anything interesting to talk about.
Oh yes, of course. The answer is no. Colin? Kenny?
Are you in any way affected by what took place last week here?
Oh, Coach Bean?
Yeah.
2004 was an interesting time because I think it was for the first time in guessing that they hired so many people. There were like, I think, 20 of us in a room, and they were all new hires. John Beam was one of them. He used to send almost the entire football team to my class, ethics and philosophy and religion. And these kids sucked. They were loud, they were lazy, they were obnoxious, they were rude. And every semester, I would email John saying, "Who are these people? Can you not talk to them, knock some sense into their thick skull?" And there were some relatively good people. CJ Anderson was one. Him and I really liked CJ. He went out and became, Broncos, and a few other folks. A couple went to San Francisco, 49ers. So this is, the problem is not so much Laney. The problem is just Oakland. And Laney can't but be impacted by the way Oakland has been for a long, long time. My car was vandalized in the parking lot. And eventually I had to call the insurance company. They came, looked at it, and they said, it's totaled. So I went to my dean, took pictures, and I said, can you guys do something about this? No, you gotta go to court and file a restraining order. It happened on campus. I gotta go to like Fremont and do ABCD. No, we're sorry. So then I sent the pictures to the vice president. Way back then it was Rudy something. Very nice man, Rudy Bishkov. He says, no, I'm really sorry to hear that. Okay, well, that's great. Then I saw the president, now chancellor, Tamil. I see her, in the tower building. She says, Amir, I heard what you said. What happened to your car? I'll come to your office tomorrow and we can sit and talk. I said, okay. And so we're sitting, very nice woman. She says, well, just know that I'm hearing you and I'm seeing you. Well, that's great, How about my car? Well, I can see you. I can hear you. That's great. Okay. Or last week, I go to see my boss, Say, listen, you guys are cutting like a lot of classes. This instructor have been with us for the past like 7 years, 10 years almost. Give her a class. She says, well, I appreciate your sentiments. Who cares what you appreciate? Just, there's all this money. Just find a way to give her a class. These are part-time instructors and financial stuff. She says, well, I was once a part-time instructor. Well, then you should know better.
Right.
But, it's just a lip service. It's just words. It means nothing, really. I think they pulled out Alameda Sheriff from the campus because of money reasons. Yeah. mental illness on the rise. I mean, you just don't know. You just don't know what branch to focus on because everything is just connected to the trunk and the roots. You know, you can talk about technology, you can talk about divorce, you can talk about depression, you can talk about loneliness, you can talk about all sorts of things, drugs, you know. And you just don't know which path to take to fix anything because everything is connected to everything else, you know. So when you walk around campus today, there are like all these people with yellow jackets, security. I mean, it's great. Don't get me, it's wonderful, you know, but it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Because like anything else under the sun, after a while, it'll be forgotten. I mean, I buried someone a couple of weeks ago. You know, you go to the mortuary, you wash their body, you bury them. And while you're doing all those things, there's a part of you that comes, you become very aware of certain things, of time, of energy, of how you want to live your life, of the sort of music you want to listen to, the sort of people you want to hang out with, the sort of conversations you want to have. I mean, these are wonderful things. I mean, it's a heavy cross to carry because you're always second guessing yourself. You know, like you come to class, what is we're talking about? Like Danielle said, the truth is, words like seeds are good as a place of inspiration. But then you need that inspiration as a seed to be protected. And the only way it can be protected is by this man, Danielle, coming to my office all the time, talking all the time, reading books all the time, listening to the right things or reading the right things. And without that, it's just a waste of time, you know. And of course, instructors have this relatively deceptive phrases, you know, like we only plant seeds and God knows what's going to happen in the future. Are you kidding? Of course you know what's going to happen in the future, you know. When you look at how American life is, how time moves so fast here in this culture, and any culture probably these days, no one really has time to sit and focus on anything for too long. You know, add to it the power of technology over our psyches. So, for the past, I mean, before even then this incident took place on Thursday, I've been wanting to lock the classroom door. Once we're all in, just lock it. Because I'm not sure who's going to walk in and with what problem. But I keep forgetting. And that's the thing, you know, we forget. Yes, you know, this tragedy that took place on Thursday is fresh. I usually walk the field, but both gates were locked. And there are flowers, you know, there's some notes, thank you, John, and all that. It's wonderful, it's great. But it raises some problems, which is, why is it that human beings wake up and they've lost certain things? You know, right now, for example, she has the energy and the money and the time, the luxury to, go somewhere and listen to music, you know. Time passes, she gets a little older, she thinks back about, you know, when she was younger, she doesn't have the mobility, you know, maybe other health issues, maybe time issues. And then she's going to think back and say, man, you know, kind of like you and I, you know, there is no reason for you to be here at this age, at this college. You should like have a master's or a PhD. But life happens,
Yeah.
you know, and we don't have really full knowledge of who we are, what our future is going to look like. By the time we get there, there is a good amount of, when time passes, what happens to all of us is we have this thing called conscience. And conscience happens because you begin to see certain things. And when you see things, you have some regret, you have some, you know, remorse. And it's a good place for repentance, you know, and you don't have to be religious for any of this stuff, you know, and that's the problem with conscience. You know, the moment you begin to see some things, it means that some time has passed. You have gained some clarity. You go back and you kind of see your mistakes, and then you say, how could I be so stupid? You know, and that's, I think all of us are condemned for that. Do I wish like I hang out with John Beam a bit more? No. I mean, you know, him and I did the same thing in different ways. We both cared for students very much. He was in the athletic department, I'm in the philosophy department, but we're doing the same thing basically, you know. Many of the students who came to John or who went to John, some of them are homeless, some of them have no parents, no elders. And John really became like this gigantic tree for them, protected them. So I don't really know what can be done. Change is not possible for the masses. It's only possible for a few. And those few have to belong to a cult of sorts. You know, that they revolve around one person, and that person kind of just tells them what to do, what not to do for a short while. You know, it's kind of like, let's say you're lost and confused, and you run into, say, Daniel. And he says to you, you know, if you were to go to school and do A, B, C, D for the next like 5, 6 years, just devote yourself to that, then your life will be transformed. And for some strange reason, just gravitate towards him, you like him. And 5, 10 years pass by, now you have a master's or a PhD or something, you know. And you think back and you say, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. And you realize that he was your Buddha. He had seen something about you, you know, and he himself was a realized man in the sense that he came to understand the importance of money, the importance of time, the importance of health, for example. And he said, well, stop eating Cheetos so much, or stop eating, you know, saturated fat so much. And you realize he's a lifesaver, you know, and because you liked him, i.e., God forbid, loved him, what would happen is that you just revolve around him. He becomes your Buddha. He creates this thing called the Sangha. Sangha means community, you know. He becomes your brother, your mother, your sister, your brother. He's your everything. And then you follow his advice to the letter. That becomes his dharma, his teachings, that you follow, you know, letter of the law. And it always is going to be the letter of the law because you have no access to the spirit. You're just a novice, you're a student. All you know is that you're moved. You don't know why. You like him, you don't know why. You're going to follow him, you don't know why. But there is something about it that says, you know, just give it a shot. You know. Yeah. They sent out these emails. I think you guys got them too, about how to cope. You guys got them? It's the problem. I mean, it's great. I mean, whatever you can do for students is great. But the thing is, if you know people were able to cope, mental illness would not be as high as it is. You know, most of the social ills would not be as it is if people could just simply read, learn, and change their ways. You know, so at the end of the day, you walk away saying, you know, this is just really dumb. It's really, really just stupid. But what else can you do? You know, I mean, the only thing you can reach, really, is just a pamphlet. You do a mass email, everybody gets it, and that's the best you can do.
Do you think that, for the most part, everybody is given the opportunity to become a student or to have that mentor?
No.
No?
No, I think the very core of life is about injustice. Some people look good, some people look bad. Why? You know, why is it that those who look good get all the power and all the attention, and those who look like me, you know, get all the crummy people around them? Some people are just animated. You know, some people die young, some people die old, some people die in their sleep, some people die, you know, with a good amount of pain. Some people are black, some are brown, and they're subjected to racism of all sorts. You know, some people don't have that problem, they have other issues. So the core of life is about injustice. That's the first thing. The second really is consider this for a moment. Men's sexual peak, and this is a study I read maybe 30 years ago. I'm sure things have changed. Men's sexual peak is about 17 and a half, 18. Women's sexual peak is about 27, 28. So as men reach about 27, 28, they begin to lose that peak, okay? And so you kind of sit back and say, if God created human beings, there should have been some justice about this. If you want to like have the sexual explosion within the human body, for example, or psyche, have them both peak at the same time so they could just mingle. By the time woman desires a man, I mean, sexually, the man can't perform or he's not really that interested, or even if he is, he can't really last that long. So, you're talking about teaching and learning. Consider, for example, that you want to shop at Costco. Well, there's nothing wrong with the desire. Do you have a car? Do you have enough cash to pay an extra $100 for membership? You only really need like 5 mushrooms.
Right.
You go there and you buy 50 mushrooms for the same price that you would pay for 3, right? But you realize that like 40 of them go to waste eventually because you don't really need that many. I guess the point I'm trying to make, a lot of different elements need to come together. When I met my own teacher, let me just give you an example. I was very, very confused. And that's the thing that you need. You need to be confused. Because in confusion, you're open to possibilities. The first thing I ask at the very beginning of the semester, what are you studying in school? And when I detect a voice that's somewhat aggressive and has a good amount of certitude behind it or in it, doing biology. Well, I'm not gonna play with you that much, because it takes a lot of work. Because when you're confused, you're open to possibilities. It's like I am single. Well, if you're single, then everybody is an option. When someone says, yeah, I'm with someone, but I really want out. Possibility. I am with someone and I love him. I'm gonna marry him. Don't go there. You can, it just takes a lot of work. So that's the first thing. I was confused. And when you're confused, the nice thing about confusion is that it's not a rational thing, it's an emotional thing. So you're waiting to have someone walk into your life who can inspire your emotional aspect, not intellectual, but emotional. That's important. Now there's a risk. It's like you're alone, you're somewhat sad and depressed, you're lonely, you go to a coffee shop, and the only thing that this guy wants is your body. The flip side is you're alone, sitting in a coffee shop, you're desperate, you're lonely, you're sad, depressed, all that stuff. A guy comes to you, and he genuinely likes you, and he wants to be committed. And the thing is, there are no guarantees who's going to approach you and what their intentions are, And so, and there are people who talk, but have no experience. I'm sure that if I was to kind of have your final essay be write about old age, for example, use AI or your own imagination, you can write a relatively good essay, like 50 pages. How old are you? Like 20.
Yeah.
What the hell do you know about old age? Shut your fucking mouth. But that's not the way people function. Just because they assume that they can string some words together, some ideas together, they assume that they can understand, which is far from truth, right? And so then you run into someone and, they happen to be a little older, a little wiser, more experienced under their belt. They begin to talk. You say, wow, this is interesting. But you have no idea if that talk comes from books, or that comes from their own life experience and how well that has been processed and understood. And then it depends on your life situation. If, for example, let's just say you like this class, which is great. But let's say you have 2 jobs, and you have 3 kids, and you have a husband, and you have a wife, and you have a dog, and you have like 1,000 things that you got to do on a daily basis. The truth is you can only spend like an hour for this class. And that hour is not going to consume your life, okay? Really, transformation is like going through chemotherapy. My sister-in-law went through it, my mom went through it. And what you have is, your entire body aches. and your entire mental space is consumed. Am I going to survive this? Am I going to die? And then even if chemo was to be successful in radiation, you have to take these pills, these gigantic pills for the next 5 years. And like part of your body just black, it's just bruised. And then you're always weak. And that's how it is. It's like you have a virus called IA, your teacher, and his or her ideas inside you. And they infect you. They infect your soul. And there's a good amount of jealousy and envy that now lives inside you. Your brother is going around, he's happy, he's successful, he's married, he's this, he's that. Why am I such a loser? And it's a very self-defeating place to be for a long, long time. Will you survive it? Who the hell knows? Are you going to, even if you do survive it, will you get anywhere? If I was again to go back, forgive me, for my own life experience, there were 3 of us. The other student, Hussein, he's blind. His wife is in a mental institute. His daughter should be in a mental institute. He's been sad and depressed for the past, 20 years. And that's the doing of Hussein, the teacher Hussein. Yeah. Because, look, if you're constantly in the business of examining your life, examining your relationships, examining the way you think, look, imagine for a moment that for the first time in your life, you were going to take that saying in the New Testament very seriously. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. You can't hold a grudge, pass no judgment. You can't, that's a heavy cross to carry. And after a while, you realize that it's just too much. Your back is bending, your knees are breaking, and you can't even judge yourself. And the problem with that is you and I have emotions. And emotions are nothing but judgmental elements. Good, bad, right, wrong. I feel this, I feel that. And you're only supposed to kind of walk around as a student of life. And that's just too much. So ultimately, a lot of different things. And the other one, Mehrdad. He married someone not from his culture. And by culture, sure, part of it is the physical aspect of it. She's American. But the other part is, there is a saying that we have in the Persian world that you have to adopt the culture of your teacher. And that means the following. You have to kind of walk like him, talk like him, feel like him, see like him. You have to do that for at least 10, 15 years. Okay? And then you can go back and you can do things on your own. And you can kind of grow your own eyes, your own ways of seeing things and dealing with things. But the machinery that you need needs to be put in place by the person you're working with. And so if your life is busy, that can never happen. I remember I was working with Hussein for a while, and I went to San Francisco. I ran into a Persian girl. We got along really, really well. And I got distracted for the next 5 years. And all I could think about was a relationship. That was a stupid thing for me to do. But, you're young. You're looking for attention, validation of all sorts, and, things happen. If you're able to find your way back, well, you're lucky. Most often that's not possible, By the time you realize that, yes, your father was a little mean, but he was mean for all the right reasons, you want to go knock on his door and say, Dad, I understand, but he's dead now. What the hell do you do now? So the point is, it's very delicate, and there are lots of different things that need to come together. It's no different than cooking. If you're a good cook, too little salt, no good. Too much salt, no good. In the oven too early, no good. Little too much, no good. So some in this class are going to do Thanksgiving. You're going to be in the charge of baking the turkey. You know how it is. A little too much of this, a little of that, no one's going to eat it. And that's exactly what teachers do. Teachers are in the business of cooking ideas inside you. But that takes a long time. And for the most part, they need the student's permission. Yeah. Nearly impossible. Yeah.
I was talking to my friend the other day.
Yeah, friends?
Yeah. And we were talking, and this thing came up that we feel like the universe experiencing itself through puzzle.
I don't know. I went to Montclair Village many, many years ago, and there were these really nice kids with a couple of folders asking me to donate to save the dolphins. And it reminded me of something that Nietzsche had said many, many centuries ago. The people who love animals and want to protect animals have such huge hatred for their own kind, human beings. You know, or sometimes when you are driving in a forest-like environment and you see a lone house, you know, in the middle of the trees, and you say, wow, it's beautiful. It is beautiful, but the truth is, whoever occupies that house must really hate civilization and all the things that human beings have achieved in the past, like 200,000 years or so. There is a poem by Khayyam. Khayyam is a Persian poem, astronomer, mathematician, Sufi, but all that aside. گردون کمری ز عمر فرسوده ماست. I am old, but in another few years I will die. And in death I will find my freedom. The universe, you know, goes round and round and round. It's really, really old. And I doubt very much it's ever going to die. And you know what happens when you get really, really old? You see a lot of birth, you see a lot of sickness, and you see a lot of death. And what you encounter most often is sickness and death. If not sickness in your body, certainly sickness in your mind. And certainly sickness in your emotions, you know. And then you die a miserable death with a lot of regret. That's what the universe sees. And if the universe has consciousness, if it's alive, if it sees, it can't be a happy thing. Unless it's American and listens to bad music. No pun intended. So, I don't know. That's a good debate for a philosophy class, which this isn't. Or an ethics class, which again, this isn't. There are lots of wonderful ideas out there about the world, the physical world having only one function. Hello? Do you know the function of education in the cradle of capitalism? Its function, education, you know, it's not there to make you more aware. And it's not there to wake you up. It's not there to make you more mindful, you know. It's not there to make you a more conscientious human being. Because if it was, to truly do what it's supposed to do, AT&T would have no power over you. And the internet would not have no power over you. You know, and Kim Kardashian would have no power over you. And the sort of music that you guys listen to would have no power over you. I'm sure it's great music, don't get me wrong. Well, get me wrong. So one of the philosophers that I really enjoy, his name is Gurdjieff, and he was Armenian. He had argued that there are two forces in life. One life puts you to sleep, one force puts you to sleep, and another force wakes you up. You know, when your belly is full, well, what waits for you is laughter and comfort. When your belly is screaming for food, you think about injustice, and you think about, you know, being thankful. You think about what it means to need other human beings because they are your salvation. And so he argues that the function of the universe is to make sure that people forever remain asleep. You know, Malcolm X demands that you go against life. Mahatma Gandhi demands that you go against life. Jesus Christ demands that you go against life. Going against life is tough. It's like being a salmon fish, that you have to go against the current of the water, and that takes too much work. It's like every time I ask you to write an essay for this class, you look at the modules, you look at the, all the things that you have to listen to and write about, and say, you know what, this is stupid. Your ideas are stupid. This class is infantile. I don't want to do this. Well, you're going against my power. You're going against the academic system. And if you're able to resist the temptation, the fear of the grade, the fear of your future, being completely bankrupt, then you may be rebellious. Who knows? Maybe you'll be one of those rare, lucky individuals who amount to something that's profound later on in life. But that's what it takes, that you have to go against life. You have to go against this class and other classes because you see something about these classes. Just talk. It doesn't do anything. It's like, you take a class, say next period, somebody will go to a class and the instructor will say, for those of you who may not know, an event took place on Laney campus on Thursday, so we can talk about it. And then you have a student in the back says, I was raised in a very abusive environment, but my parents were kind enough and generous enough to send me to therapy from the age 2. I've been to therapy. I've looked at all these pamphlets that you guys have sent out. If these pamphlets or therapy sessions would do me good, I've been healed now. But I'm more angry than ever. Time passes. I don't figure out what my emotions are and why they are the way they are, And all of a sudden, you're kind of undermining the authority of the instructor, the people who kind of came together, find these pamphlets, send them out to students in hopes that there'll be some sort of a remedy of sorts. So if you look at life as your enemy, which for the most part it is, then the universe is alive and has only one function, to make sure you never see or hear or listen to good music. I mean, it's no joke when, consider, I don't know if you guys have ever read the New Testament. It's beautiful, the 4 Gospels. I know you're fond of reading other books. I'm not even a Christian, but I love those books. I love them because when I was 18, the first thing that my teacher said, he gave me the New Testament in Persian. He says, you need to focus on the 4 Gospels. You need to write down all the sayings of Jesus and memorize them. And so when I tell you John 5:5, you tell me how it is, what it is, And it's no joke when he comes onto the scene at the age of 30 and says, if you want to follow me, you got to hate your parents. I'm not here for peace. Just think about that for a moment. When you look at your parents and you say, I want to move out and I want to find my own way. What you're saying is, I have looked at you guys for the past 18, 19, 20 years and I don't like what I see and I certainly don't want to become like you guys. I love you, but that's not my future. And that's devastating for parents to hear, But this is the created juices that live inside you. You want to rebel against life because you know that life ultimately puts you in this thing called the matrix, and you begin to work from metacortex. Other people govern the way you think, other people govern the way you feel. Everything about it is other forces, certainly not yours because you have no power. I'm not talking about people like Nietzsche, who kind of sits somewhere and writes a book about how to be a superhuman being. Ideas are good, don't get me wrong. But ideas untested, not brought down here, not applied, it just becomes a bumper sticker, And the problem with, going against life is that you see life everywhere around you. Your friends are part of life. Social media is part of life. Education is part of life. The things you talk about are part of life. You have a guy in the White House who enjoys hearing people talk about him all the time, negative or positive. He consumes the airspace. All of it is about him. And what do you and I do? We come to class and we talk about him. He gets more of it, And so to resist the temptation, I don't know what sort of a human being you need to have that much of a will to kind of catch yourself every time you're slowly falling back into life. You know. The force that wakes you up, you can't find it in life. If you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, what you encounter is you need someone like a Malcolm, like a Mahatma Gandhi, like a Jesus Christ. And these are forest philosophers. And that means that they have walked away from life. They sit in their room, they turn off the lights, they close their eyes, or maybe they just read books. They think, they contemplate, they reflect. They are not touched by life. They're only touched by their own reflections and emotions. And we call them Inkadu, which means that if life is there to rob you of your innocence, okay, the moment you try to restore your innocence, you become an Inkadu, you know. You live in the force where you want things to happen organically and naturally, you know. And when you become really, really, really good, you walk into life, and now you have the power to exploit life. Let me give you an example. For those of you in this class who are depressed, and you've been depressed for a while, for those of you in this class who are lonely and sad and pathetic, my solution is the following to those troubles. Get your master's degree in psychology, or political science, or philosophy, and then go into teaching. And then once you're in the classroom, talk about your own stuff in a very philosophical way. You're going to slip the first few years. But then as you get better in your craft, you become more articulate, more creative, and you realize every time you walk into a classroom, it's like 5 hours of therapy you're giving to yourself. Add to it the fact that other people are listening to you, you know. And that's how you begin to exploit life. You understand what life is, you understand what life does, you understand what life has done to you, and you say, okay, it seems that the only way out of this mess is for me to remove myself from life. How do you do it? You know, I had a friend not too long ago. They just ended their life. Depressed for about 30 years. You know. And when I first met him, I said, listen, you have a bachelor's in psychology. Go get your goddamn master's. Just get it. Yes, no, maybe, yes, no. 30 years passed by. And depressed people usually are addicted to a specific kind of conversation. And you can only have those conversations with specific groups of people who are like you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're grieving, you're not going to hang out with someone who's like happy and laughing and listening to bad music. You know, they want to hang out with someone who just lost a parent or a sister or a dog or a cat or their soul, something, you know. So because you have common language, you have common emotions, you know. And so every time, you know, he would pick up the phone, he would call another person who was equally as depressed as he was. And I would tell him, stop doing that, you know, because the habits get reinforced. And is it true that people want to get better? Absolutely. You know, but is it true that they have to go against, I mean, I want to live another like 5-10 years. And you know what I did yesterday? I went to a bakery shop.
Did you?
Fournay. It's in Berkeley. That good bread. And I looked at their almond croissant. Oh man, butter, sugar, fat. I was just standing to get bread. And all of a sudden, this croissant started winking at me.
Calling.
Eat me. Eat me. I said, no, eat me. I said, okay. And you know, I said, no, I'm just going to have a cup of coffee. I'm just going to look at it. That's all I will, just look at it. said, touch me. No. I said, okay, just, gentle tap. Grab me. I grabbed it. And 2 minutes later, I had eaten the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, not even half of it?
No, all of it. Well, no, of course not. I'm just a shitty human being I am.
Oh.
Now, as I'm eating, this thing so fast, I'm visualizing my arteries getting clogged,
Oh my God.
getting a heart attack while I'm driving. Then I go home, I wipe my face, make sure nothing is in my beard. And my wife says, what did you get? Yeah, I got you guys some croissants. Yeah? I'm so glad that you resisted temptation. You didn't buy anything for yourself. No, I'm well married, I just had a triple bypass. I'm not going to have another one. So you have no choice but to lie. Lie to your wife, lie to your kids, lie to yourself. And, but man, I'm going to go there and buy another one today.
Are you?
No.
Okay.
No, but I went on the treadmill and just walked for like 5 hours. That's the problem with extremists, You do too much one end and you do too much on the other end.
Yeah.
So. Hello. Are you doing anything? Come on. It could be about Home Depot. Is it a good thing for me to come to Home Depot and steal something?
I would say, no.
Why not? What time is good? What aisle? Which one do you work at? Okay. So if I send you a text, you can just put my stuff in a corner, I can just come with a backpack? What use are you for then? Oh, that's all I need. Good job. I'll come there after my class. I teach a religion class. You can help me steal. Yeah.
The thought came into my mind. It's like, what role is there for violence in society? And not just, when it shows up.
So, Chief Seattle is a Native American. When people from Europe came down here and they began to kind of take over, there came a point, and of course, it's an uneven match. You have guns, they have like sticks. You don't really much care about the space you occupy. They hold it to be sacred. They're community oriented. You are individual based. And so they would come together, they would sit and talk, and then the Europeans would break their words or promises. They would come back again, they would sit and talk. This time they would sign papers, There came a point where Chief Seattle would argue that it seems that white man doesn't know what words are, and it seems that white man doesn't know what promises are. For them, it means nothing. And enough of their land had been taken and enough of their people had been massacred that he no longer desired to sit at the table and talk with them. So they picked up the bows and arrows, You're not yet a parent, and I hope you become a parent at the right time and right stage in your life. But one of the things that parents will always tell you is the following. Your kids come from school and you look at them and you say, hey, how you doing? Things are nice. You cook for them, clean for them. Then you say, okay, maybe it's time to do some schoolwork. And you say with a low volume, and then you realize that they're sitting and playing with a cell phone or watching TV or masturbating or whatever, or listening to bad music. And then you say, I told you, can you please? And after 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you realize now you're raising. Your volume is very, 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 very high. And now you begin to threaten them. If you chart this out, you realize it started down here, the volume was number 1. Okay? 20 minutes into it, you realize you're at max. There is no higher you can go. You're angry, you're like banging on the door. You take away their cell phone and bang it on the floor, you flush their laptop down the toilet. And of course, at that point, the kid looks at you and says, wow, you're really violent. Well, God damn it, yeah, you made me this way. And so I think it would have been interesting to see if the shutdown had continued, and if just regular people suffered just a bit more, what would have happened to this country? It's kind of like anything else. You have cancer, you're sick, you become very mindful of just the value of health and value of the people around you who are they're like medicine, They give you comfort and they make you soup and all that stuff. The moment that you're healed, you just forget. Yeah. And you fight with them, you abuse them. So what you realize in sickness, all of us come together. And in privilege, all of us just kind of fall apart. It would have been nice just to sit back as a scientist of sorts, to sit back and observe, what happens when a lot of people begin to suffer? Will they come together, and create a revolution? And revolutions or uprising can initially, of course, it's very civil, very peaceful. But then you realize nobody really cares for your voice. It doesn't really matter if you are number 1 or number 10, volume-wise. And you say, this is not working out for me. It's interesting when you watch some of the footage on what ICE is doing around the country, where someone is on the ground, they're being just bullied, surprised that their arm is not broken. And other people just video it, And justifiably so, because no one really wants to get hurt, no one wants pain. And you're on camera now, everybody can see you. Next thing you know is police is at your door arresting you for ABCD. In this day and age, you have no idea where you're going to end up. A few weeks ago, they cuffed this 92-year-old man and sent him back to India. 92. He'd been here for like 48 years. How do you do that? Why do you do that? I think whenever you get to a boiling place, then yeah,
there ever any positive outcome?
The positive is short-lived. If you read the book Animal Farm, it's people like you and I. I'm temperamentally very reserved, and I dislike foul language. But as I have grown more comfortable in the classroom, you realize I joke around more. Once in a while, I use foul language, and I don't have very much power, but I have enough power to make a fool of myself once in a while, And that's the thing, that when you don't have very much power, when you don't have very much power in life, you have no choice but to fall back, on your temperament. Some people are hot-tempered, and that's fine. Just speaking about my own case, where the moment you are given a good amount of power, it really does take a while for you to adjust to it, And so you begin to harass people, abuse people in all sorts of different ways. Okay? Then you get to be 75, 80, 90. You can no longer walk as well. You can no longer remember things as much. People don't pay you attention. And then something about you clicks. that you're a little mean. And the point I'm trying to make is ultimately in the book, the sheep that symbolizes innocence and honesty and meekness becomes a tyrant. They all get together, they destroy, the tyrant in their community, but they have little to no experience what happens when you as a sheep are given power, a lot of power. That's why I think when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X or Mahatma Gandhi or any of these 20th century heroes, it's an amazing, amazing feat where you're a spokesperson for Elijah Muhammad. All you got to do is just go along with his philosophy of life. But there comes a point where, for Malcolm at least, he says, truth is far more important for me than having power over people. And he walks away from the whole thing. It'd be nice if someone like Trump, with his tremendous amount of power, was to get really, really sick, and then on his sickbed, not deathbed, but sickbed, he came to understand a few things about just what it means to be sick, what it means to be old, what it means to have no medicine, no health care, and even if there is one, no one can really reach you. And then he resurrects from the dead. And with all the power that he has, he says, you know what? I want to be a little kinder to people, Will it happen? Probably not. Will people around him sabotage his intentions? Probably. But that's why I think it's important, especially for people of color, or just for young people. Once you understand the physical, political, and social space you occupy, finish school, save your money, get a good job, move out of Oakland. Especially if you want to raise a family. Listen to good music. Because the government is not going to come down to save you. And education the way it is, that's not going to do much for you either. You like philosophy, more power to you, but also major in computer science. Be smart. Know that there is a heart to you and there is a pocket to you. That, honor thy parents, commandment number 5 in the Jewish tradition. Your father is your physical body, your physical life. It's all about tables and chairs of your life. You want to honor your physical father, fine, go honor him too. But you need to understand, how the world works. Honor that, because that's power over you. If you happen to be like me, triple bypass, and you gulp down, Coke and croissants, well, then you're a stupid guy, all right? So know the power of where you are, what this place needs. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, okay? Make sure you have lots of money. At the same time, have a double major. Do philosophy. Get your bachelor's and master's in philosophy. And when you realize that, you have a knack for philosophy, it comes to you organically. You're very animated. Drop computer science. By the time you realize you're in love with philosophy, you have no problem walking away from a job that pays you $300,000 a year. And you're more than willing to go back down and just, be okay with like 60,000. In 2007, I left Laney for a different school. Way back then, the president was Frank Chong, a really, really nice guy. He comes to me and says, Amir, if you stay at Laney, you can be the dean. I'll make sure to make you a dean. What do deans talk about? Let's paint the color of the bathrooms like red. And they make a committee for that. Like 20 people sitting. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, but do you really want to sit and have these conversations? No. Is it worth like $200,000 a year? No, I'd probably die. So, yeah. And only fight for people you care for. Don't waste your time. Like you're sitting in your room, you look down, and out the window, and there is this guy just beating up this woman. You want to go down and help, that's great for you. Don't. You know how many times some of us in this class have seen this scenario? The man is beating up this woman, you intervene or the police comes. 10 minutes later, they're kissing back in the car, driving away. Yes. You're going to sneeze.
How about when you're like the cycle of abuse and running so hard or so fast and then you go back and everything?
There is this Indian story. It comes from one of the Upanishads. It's about a man who was really scared of his own shadow. So he said, you know what? I'm going to run really fast. And the faster I run, the more behind my shadow is going to be. So he runs fast and fast and fast. And the faster he runs, the faster the shadow follows him. And ultimately he just collapses and dies. So there are a couple of things. Imagine I am your father. And no one chooses to be a parent and then be abusive. Really, no one does. I mean, go back to our conversation about just how the world works. The world will do anything it possibly can to make you a piece of shit. A piece of shit as an instructor, as a student, as a boss, as a child, as a mother, as a father, as a grandparent. We all do our best. But the world just shits all over us every single second, okay? So imagine I'm your father. And I come home angry. I hate my job, I hate my life, I hate myself. And there you are, 10-year-old. You like to see your dad. So you run to me. I just slap you. Okay. No. I'm not justifying any of this. But the first kind of abuse is I physically abuse you. Okay? My fist in your face, being physical, it creates a set of sensations. Those sensations, those feelings are negative. Negative associated with pain. Okay? So you're in pain. Pain is not a good place to be. Okay? You have no money. Okay? You have no privileges of leaving the house. And the first time it happened, you said, oh, it's a fluke, you know. He wanted to come and kiss me, his fist just accidentally ran into my face. It happens the second, the third, the fourth time. Now what you have is a house, but not a home. It's not a place of safety, it's not a place of comfort, but it's a place of dread, anxiety, and fear. I no longer need to put my hand on your face. The emotions are not historical, it lives inside you. So even if I happen to be a saint, you're always going to second guess yourself running towards me. So now emotionally you begin to abuse yourself, even though the facts are otherwise. I no longer drink, I no longer smoke, okay? So one of the things you need to understand about abuse is first, it's from the outside, okay? I'm not talking about temperamentally that you have this dark and gloomy temperament to you, where even though things are good, you always give it a dark twist. You're always like a Jesus Christ. You know, I am married, I'm happy. Everything down here will eventually turn to dust. Can you just be happy for me for a minute? No, this is a waste of your time. I'm not talking about those temperaments. Now, there is this period where you have to adjust to abuse. In other words, you can't live like this, losing sleep, not having any food, being in your room all the time, not talking to anyone, okay? So we are resilient, and remember what Darwin said. You will always try to find a way to cope. You will justify your emotions, you will justify your father, you will justify the reason why you're in the relationship. You will do whatever you can. Now, by the time you're able to justify, a good amount of habits have been formed inside you. A habit is what? I know that on Monday, Tuesday, I come to class. And I've been coming to school for the past like 30 years. This is my stage. I don't really know what happens when I retire. Okay? I wake up in my bed, like 5 years from now, there is no school to go to, no classroom to walk into, and no people to talk to. And I sit home. Well, there's a period of adjustment. But until that period comes, I'm going to go through all this conflict, the whys, the wheres, the what, trying to figure things out. By the time you've adjusted, you have created some habits. Now, if you have never had a good father, a gentle father, if I've always been abusive, there's a good chance that you look at your mother for some help, but your mom happens to be profoundly passive. Your mom is being abused and you're being abused. Your role model is not your father, but your mother. So you cultivate this habit. I'm abused and I'll be passive. Now, there are some people like one of the social reformers, Emma Goldman. She was an anarchist. She loved her father, but her father was a dick. He was abusive. He hit them, and she loved her mom and she loved her sister. And one day, he was just beating the crap out of her sister. And she goes and beats him up, and she fights him. And of course, he beats her up some more. But she said, when I get a little older, I'm going to be a midwife. And every girl that is born, I'm going to whisper into her ears, rebel. And so, you're only going to gravitate towards things that you know and you're comfortable with. If I am your boyfriend and I'm not abusive, and abuse is the only thing that you have experienced the past like 20, 30 years, and some are self-created, you create on your own, because the other thing about abuse is that you don't really have much of a worth after a while. You don't deserve happiness, you don't deserve laughter, you don't deserve anything. Okay, so when someone shows you a good time, when I say, let you and I go see a movie, I'll pay for everything. And come live with me, I'll pay for everything. So what the hell is going on? And you take the bed, I'll take the sofa. You said, this does not make any sense. There has to be something wrong with him, right? So if you're not able to demonize me, you're going to have a very difficult time staying in this relationship. Now, if I really like you and love you, and I see that there is potential for great relationship, for a family life and all that, I have to, and I don't know who does this, but I have to be willing to take your abuse for the next 20 years until you realize I mean you no harm. And you can trust me. Then you can open up. But that also depends as you're opening up, that all the stuff that comes up, you don't ultimately break and go back to the routine. If you're able to be baptized, then you and I could have a chance. But like any addiction, rehab is very difficult. If you were to tell me, for example, Amir, can you come to class and just give a good lecture on Karl Marx? Can it be linear, please? Can you not digress? And I'm going to look at you, I'm going to be honest. Say, listen, I wish I could do that. If you want that, you should go take my brother's class. It's very linear, point A to point B. I can't do that, which is part of it is temperament. The other part is, this is the way I've been teaching for 30 some odd years. I can't change my ways. Like a drug addict, I'm like a teach addict. This is the way I teach, and I wish I could be otherwise to kind of please you, but I can't. So either stay or drop the class, But if you look at abuse and the habits revolving around abuse as a form of addiction, then to somehow you can kind of grasp the complexity of it. If you have any friends who have wrestled with, addiction to alcohol, Richard Burton, and I don't know if you guys know who Richard Burton is. he used to, I think, be married to Elizabeth Taylor, or, they were really like a good mix for a while. There is this, go to YouTube and Google him, Richard Burton Alcoholism. First, he has this British accent, which is just poetry. It's like good music, that it's always winter when you're an alcoholic, and it's always raining. And you're always cold, and you're always wet, and you're always walking alone. And he says it in such a poetic way, And because he's been there, and because he's done that, he says, I really feel bad for anyone who has that particular disease. So a couple of things. If you are 19 or 20, if you devote yourself, kind of like going to school, just devote yourself to 10 years studying this disease called abuse. Look at its history. Look at its emotions. They all live inside you. And that's the best book you could ever read. You are your best therapist, and you are your best book. Okay? So, and that takes a long time because, there's a cover. So you're closed right now. Then you open it and you say, I don't really want to get close to all the stuff. And then there are days where you just, open the cover and just, it remains open, but you don't read. And then you say, you know what? I'm just going to look at some of the chapters in the table of the content, And you only go to the ones that are slightly casual and not so deep-rooted. And as you begin to play with this, you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to this chapter that has like 900 pages now. It's deep and it's tough. So if you're able to read this book, or anyone, 10 years, and you got to go against life because your friends are there to make you forget. We have a tendency of repressing these emotions, walking away from the pain, whatever they, you'll be 30. And then you have 40 years to live a good life. And it's worth it. It's much better than, having all the stuff inside you, and then you're 40 and you realize you just hate looking at yourself. And then you say, okay, wait, I want to make this work. You're 40 now, you're a little tired, your body's worn out, emotionally you're just worn out. And when you get older, it's difficult to learn things. But there's always magic, Magic happens to people randomly. So, yeah. But you always go back to what you're comfortable with. Young Sheldon, you go back to what you're comfortable with. Yeah.
Another friend.
Sure.
And he says he's anti-conformist, but he's a vegan and he's an anarchist, and he only texts on platforms that are privacy based. So he's boxing himself in with all these different labels and all these different rules for himself. And I still would go much different than the majority of people, but he's labeling himself more than the other people who are conforming. So is there such thing as being non-conformist? What does that do? And
I think you go through various stages. You're 18, and remember, naming and labeling are very, very, very important because they're like a GPS. I'm a communist. It takes you all the way back to Karl Marx, for example, even though it existed before him. And that's a huge world to be involved in and involved with, and it's like what lived inside Karl Marx now lives inside me. So you need that label. And you make sure that everybody sees that label. So you dress a certain way. I went to this plant shop the other day. It's on MacArthur because I had to get something from Farmer's Market or Farmer's Wife or something. And in this plant shop, there was this guy, young kid, long hair, braided, beautiful beard, long hippie baggy pants. There's nothing wrong with it, you know. There comes a point, if it ever comes to you, where you say, you know what, I want to look like normal people. I want to be invisible. You know, I want people to work really hard to figure out who I am on the inside. Because I'm tired of people looking at my beard and thinking I'm a hippie and then coming to me and talking about, like, does the universe have consciousness? You know? And so you become much more reserved, much more protective of the stuff that lives inside you. It's no different than, you know, when you're 18, you share your body with a whole host of people. When you're 25, you kind of hold yourself a bit more sacred. You honor your body, you honor the emotions that your body can create and the experiences that you can store in your memory bank. And so I think initially, because you're young, you label yourself in all sorts of different ways. Nothing wrong with that. The trick is to transcend those labels. You know, when I was 19, I grew a beard because I just like religious ideas. And I had like continue to read the New Testament. I say, Jesus had a beard, I need to have a beard. You know, if Confucius had a beard, I need to have a beard. And then Hussein looks at me and says, shave it. You need to shave your beard. And so he comes in the morning to the car wash. I still had my beard. He slaps me really, 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 really hard. He said, didn't I tell you to shave your beard? And I think his point was, just because you look a certain type, it doesn't mean it's you. Just because you speak about anarchism, it doesn't mean you're an anarchist. It just means you know the lingo. Do you know how many hiring committees I've been in? And what all these administrators have in common is they know the buzzwords. They all know the buzzwords. Once they get the job, once you interact with them, you realize, man, they're really pieces of shit. Some of them, you know. So I think they're just growing stages that we go through. You know, I had a friend. He passed away because of lung cancer. His father was the biggest narcotic dealer in Northern California. He was part of the Aryan Brotherhood, you know. He had killed about 11 people in prison, but if you don't see it, it didn't happen. Anyways, yeah. I was going to say some more, but... So anyone else besides Colin? Danielle?
There's also time.
That's what?
Time to go.
What do you say?
Time.
Where? I can't go anywhere with you. I have class after this.
And you mentioned if you feel sick, don't go to other sick people because then you're just going to go in and echo chamber. Would it be better to, should there be like a mix of people that like, you know, sometimes talk to people who like you have a lot in common with, even if that's bad, or should you only like be around people who are the opposite of you, so you can find yourself in that and be open to like.
If I am sick and you want to hang out with me in hopes of fixing me, for example, because that's what most people want to do, and I think there is a part in us that's very empathetic towards anyone who's suffering, and so you gravitate towards them. If I have, let's just use just hippie language, if I have good energy and you feel that energy and you like it, forgive me, it's a shitty language and a shitty way of putting things, but right? And in trying to help me, something about you is born. You become a therapist, you become a healer of sorts, and you like that part of yourself, which is wonderful. I probably would also enjoy hearing some encouragement. And it's something we all do, okay? And you have the luxury of time, you have the luxury of having sufficient energy, you know, all that stuff. There comes a point where you say, I don't want to experience my own image through another human being. So I know Amir Sabzawari is a sick human being, but I don't really know if he's at a place where he's able to listen. There's a place where he's able to hear. And if he's at a place where he's able to kind of apply what he hears. You also by this time have grown to understand a bit more how transformation comes about, how healing comes about, what makes someone ready. You also get tired of hearing your own voice, you know. And again, remember, advice is very much like sharing your body. You also say, you know what, I know what this person is going through, but he's not there yet. I'm not going to sleep with him. Not physically, I'm not going to sleep with him intellectually or emotionally. I don't want to waste my time. Does that make you a Scrooge? Yes. Is it also possible that you and I could get together and you could inspire me for a minute? Yes. But just because I've been inspired by you, it doesn't mean it has a long shelf life. It could die at any time, you know. I think it's when you're young, experimentation, more power to you. You should go out there and do it. One of the problems with shortcuts is that if I was to tell you to go to, say, building 200, and this is exactly the direction you go, you would never experience how it feels to be lost, to be confused. You would never know the emotion of anxiety and fear, which means that your language is not as universal as you want it to be. So whenever someone comes in and says, I'm confused, you say, well, I don't really care. And you can't care because you haven't been there. So part of the reason that it's good for you to go out and experiment is you get bruised up. And in getting bruised up, you get to feel a few things. And if you don't get drowned in the negativity, you'll kind of resurrect from the ash a bit more wiser, a bit more insightful, a bit more clever and cunning. For those of you who have nothing to do, you're more than welcome. Adam, yes, sorry.
Is it in our nature to hold grudges and want revenge?
It's good to see you, Jason. So, look, if I am your boyfriend, and by the time I am categorized as a boyfriend, there is trust, there is faith, there is love, there is future, there are kids, you and I sleep together, all sorts of things. So there are lots of things in there, okay? And so I say, I'm going to call you like at, 10. And I call you 5 days later. And your question is, should you hold a grudge? Absolutely. You know, for you, I'm like a Costco. If it's a stranger, if she tells you that she's going to call you at 5, well, you don't give a shit about her. She's nobody to you. You know? And so, just in case you come to class next time and there she is, you're going to say, what happened to you? I'm sorry, you know, I 18-wheeler ran over me. You know? And that's it. Can we get together today? Yes, sure, why not? If on the other hand, it's someone with whom you have a history, you know, and you have trust and you have faith and there is emotional intimacy and all that stuff, yeah, grudge is very, very natural. Yeah. Yeah, hold the grudge. Yeah. Yeah, hold the grudge. Well, what is it about, though? Hold the grudge. Let him sleep on the sofa. Yeah. For a long, 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 long time. You know, men need to be taught. They're uncivilized. They're beasts. What? Well, let me argue with that. I'm just kidding. No, but it's, yeah, hold the grudge. Colin, what are you doing here? Don't you have a class? Oh. Well, all right then. Well, let's have a question then. How about, yeah.
Going back to what you were talking about, how ICE was like attacking people and how there were onlookers who were not doing anything, they were just like recording that you were involved or anything. I think, or I don't know if you've heard it called the sheep, but I would ask, like, what would they do in that situation? Because both the victims and the onlookers are kind of powerless. So, I don't know what are supposed to do.
You can't do anything. A few years ago, I was at the BART station across the street to pick up my wife. And so she comes in, and there is this white Honda that pulls up. He's also waiting for his partner. She comes in, and he starts just punching her. I mean, I don't know what the conversation was inside the car, but he starts punching her. My wife was pregnant, like 6 or 7 months. I don't remember. And she just gets out. The hell are you going? He has no right to put his hand on this woman. Get back in the car. She just goes there. And this big guy gets out and says, you should walk away before I, beat the crap out of you. No, I'm a man. You would think that I'm going to get out and beat this guy up. I mean, this guy was like a dinosaur. I'm like a mouse, right? But I didn't give a shit. My wife, on the other hand, she gave a shit, but for all the wrong reasons. 10 minutes later, they're kissing and making up and like doing it in the car. Hello. And the point I'm trying to make, there are certain people for whom it takes a while to kind of get into action. And there are some people who just automatically run into the fire. First, there are a couple of things when we talk about ICE. There's a stock market on prison beds. So when they say that every month, for example, we need to arrest 3,000 people, because now that everything is privatized, if you can reach the number 3,000, the government is going to give you a certain amount of money. It's no longer about who you are, what you've done, if you're guilty, innocent, none of those things matter. So it's highly political and it's highly monetized. Okay? Second, even if you are a citizen and you're arrested, you have no idea where they're going to send you. And you have no idea when you're going to see your freedom. I mean, everything is in the dark. And so as you're standing and looking at the scenario, you have no idea if you should engage, if you should just sit back and take pictures or take a video, what exactly you should do. And I think you have created a social environment where everybody is really just paralyzed. Add to the fact that it's not part of the American psyche to do uprising, to do social movements of that sort. You watch France, you watch Germany, you watch certain parts of Africa, you watch the Near East, you watch the Middle East. People are just fighting left and right. That's not what happens here in America. In Chile, there is a certain branch of Catholicism, liberation theology, where if all the other branches of Christianity argue for passive resistance, be like a Mahatma Gandhi or a Martin Luther King Jr., the folks in Chile who are also Catholic, they argue there comes a point where Jesus stands by the temple, goes to the money shops and destroys them and says, this is a temple of God, you guys have made it into a den of thieves. He had no problem being angry, he had no problem being aggressive, he had no problem being violent. So you know what? In certain cases, violence is justified. And so you have St. Augustine coming forth saying there is a thing called just war, that there are moments in life where, you become very, very physical. But also ICE is a new phenomenon, and it takes a while to adjust to this particular force, in society, and then try to figure out what exactly you want to do with it. I mean, it's like anything else in life, when something new hits you, you kind of suffer from a good amount of confusion, It's kind of like being punched by Mike Tyson. It takes a while for you to kind of adjust, I don't know. In 2004, I had a student, and the very first day of class, she said she killed her husband. She stabbed him to death. First day. Why? They had 3 kids. He said he comes in, he begins to punch the kids, one black and blue. Then he comes punching me. And none of us had a safe place to go. So the only thing I could do, run to the kitchen. I was on the floor, my nose was bleeding. And he comes jumping at me and the knife goes inside him. And it's kind of, if you see the movie The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett, came in the 80s. You know, you have a woman and she just gets hit by her husband left and right, then her kids suffer because of it. At a certain point, after like 8, 9, 10 years of living with this man, he sets the apartment on fire and he just, you know, burns alive. But it takes a while for you and I to get to that place. You know. And part of it has to do with, I think, religious training and social conditioning, forgiving and compassion and all that. And there comes a point where you realize the language of compassion and forgiveness no longer works. You know, consider, for example, Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. I mean, for the first 10 years of his life, a few years of his life, that's all he did. He just preached. He just talked. Then he came to realize a few things. You know, time is short. Life is far too sacred. Bullies are not educatable. You know, and it just takes time to educate people. So it's much better to just take care of them with the sword. That's what the Native Americans did. So I know you want to talk. We can talk on Wednesday. Okay.
Do you have an email ready?
Yeah.
I sent you an email this morning.
Okay.
Tuesday morning work?
What?
Would Tuesday morning work?
Tomorrow?
Yes.
No.
No.
I won't be in the office. I have meetings.
Okay.
Hello.
Thursday morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thursday around 8:30,
Okay.
8:40.
Yeah.
I'll be in the tower building,
Okay.
4th floor. Send me an email. I'll give you the address. Okay. It's good to see
Thank
you.
you so much.
You too. Yeah.
I wanted to know, how does each religion tie into one another?
You guys must like each other. So, no, I mean, in a good way. You guys are good friends. That's what I meant.
Oh,
Oh, you are? Oh. What's the age difference? She's older? That shows, yeah. I mean, yeah. 2 years. Huh. Good for you. You have any other sisters?
Yes.
5. And you guys are all close?
Yeah, we're like a year apart.
Wow. Forgive me for the silly question. Same mom? Oh. That's like a huge factory. I mean,
They're twins.
oh, okay. You guys are not twins, though. Okay. So, how do religions do what?
tie into each other.
There is a phrase by Shakespeare, who was not really, he was a pagan, and I suppose paganism is a religion of its own. You're black, I'm brown, Evan, right? Evan is white. We all come from different histories. We've all experienced different things. We have different pursuits. And this is where Shakespeare comes in. If you tickle him, he will laugh. And if I tickle you, you will laugh. And if you tickle me, I will probably laugh too. If you cut me, I will bleed. And if I cut him, he will bleed. If you betray me, I will seek revenge. And if he betrays you, you will seek revenge. And all of a sudden you realize, well, Shakespeare has a point. It doesn't matter your skin color, it doesn't matter your history. There are certain things that all human beings have in common. Now, Is there injustice everywhere? Absolutely. Is there confusion everywhere? Absolutely. Are human beings born with a pamphlet as to how they should live their life? The answer is no. Are human beings desire to find meaning? Yes. Are we hero worshippers? Yes. Hello. And so what you realize is that, hello, Tammy, that what all people have in common is that we have needs. We have physical needs, we have emotional needs, we have spiritual needs, okay? And so, imagine if Jesus came during the time of Moses. So Jesus comes, looks around, and there are all these Hebrews in bondage. What would he say? Forgive them. If they slap you on the right, offer them the left. Right? And what would a Jew say? We are dying left and right on a daily basis. Your message is bullshit. What do you mean forgive them? You're telling me I should just sit back and watch my father, my grandmother, my kid die and do nothing? And you realize, well, Jesus in the Hebrew stage, he's incompetent, he's no good, he's useless. And what you have is life creates a hero that speaks the language of the people. People are suffering, you need a medicine. That's him, Moses. Jesus comes at a different time, It doesn't mean that Hebrews are not suffering, they are, but they're also ready for a different message. And then what you realize is that imagine now you have a Moses and you have a Jesus, which means the following. If you have a daughter and your daughter happens to be a bully, but it's only because she is 5, you become a Jesus. You forgive her. If you have a wife who has a bully and your wife is 35, you become a Moses. She slaps you, you slap her back. And you realize you have one human being, but there are two sides. There is a place where you exercise physical engagement, and there is a place where you exercise emotional engagement. Okay? And that's what all religions do. They all have certain teachings that have to do with your life in society, and a certain lifestyle that you need to exercise in the privacy of your own home. And the other thing is, some people just don't like Indian food, chicken tikka masala. You taste the teachings of Moses and it just tastes yucky. And you taste the food of Jesus and that tastes even more yucky. So, you become a Taoist. Nothing wrong with that. I think the ultimate result is, it doesn't matter if you want to go out with a black woman, a white woman, a yellow woman. The end result is you just want to be happy. That's all it is. And that's what religion does. And if you come out and say, you know what, you should only go out with white women, then you're just being stupid. It's like someone saying you should only be a Christian or a Taoist or a Muslim. Well, it just means you're uneducated. It's not worth talking to you. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the part where, I'm Jewish, and I would say that one of my life is more culturally Jewish and religiously Jewish.
Right.
So I was raised fairly Jewish. What would you say? And I'm pro-Palestine when it comes to that, and I'm completely against the Israeli government. What would you say about the part where, especially in the Bay Area, there's all Jews for the Israeli government versus against, I guess, instead of being the Israeli government?
You have a privilege of being young. And young people generally happen to be more honest. Someone like me, let's just say I was a Jew and I've been a Jew, let's just say, this is hypothetical. For the past 30 years or 40 or 50 years, I go to the synagogue every Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a long beard, wear, their clownish outfit, all that stuff. So there are things I need to protect, and I need validation from my community. If 20 people in my community are pro the government, well, I can't be the one against it. It doesn't work for me. I don't want to be an outcast. One of the things you need to understand, young people by nature, organically, are rebellious. You look at the adult world and you say, it sucks, you know, and you don't justify the images you see on TV for some political reason or for some religious reason. Young people don't have that capacity just yet, okay? When you get a little older, then your biases are much more engraved. They're like set in stone, and it's very difficult for you to change. So there is also this other aspect of religion, which is one aspect is exoteric, the other esoteric. There is the inner and the outer, you know. And it depends, you know, which version you gravitate towards a bit more. I mean, if I was to give it to you in a very, forgive me, cheap way, I would say the following. There are some men who look at you and only value what the senses will tell them. You know, she or he is attractive. It'd be wonderful to bed him or her. There are some people who say, you know what, I've been there, I've done that, I'm more interested in history. The problem with history is you now have to unpack their psychological history, and that takes a long time. You have to be patient, you have to be able to look, to study, to learn, to be a bit more objective. I think religion is very much the same way. In my head, it's very difficult to turn on the TV and watch a podcaster somehow justify the killing of like thousands of people. You know, it's like a white brotherhood being on TV justifying what happened in Holocaust. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, but human beings are cunning enough, clever enough, articulate enough to justify all sorts of things. Again, if you find yourself amongst people who believe, you know, something very, very extremely different than you, just walk away. You're young enough to create new friends, so make new friends. Yeah.
So I want to, what you're saying about starting, I think religion is regional. And I think you nailed it when you say, starts in the house. I'm Jesus. I'm Santa Claus. Well, out in the Middle East, it's Muslim. And here, you know, so that's why I feel like it starts right in that. Your first time, like, what, you know, Pakistan. Why is there no capital? Why are we not a big Muslim country here? Because that's what I feel. It's kind of territorial. It was in your face.
Yeah, it's true. And whatever you believe is like owning a house. You try to protect it. You know, if you've been going to church for the past like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, well, that's your house. If I say anything nasty about it, you're going to rise up and say, why? Why are you saying it this way? And then you're going to form a complaint. Yeah, that's how things are. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question
Sure.
about why people use a lot of fear to try to gain others to join their religion. I had an experience where someone said the reason why your people are being taken by ISIS is because you're not believing in this. And so they're being my question is, like, why like, fearing God or fearing of punishment is a common way, or just a way that people use to invite others in?
Okay.
I feel like it's one that kind of pushes the idea that it makes people reject it. So I was just wondering, what is the purpose of that?
Okay. Do you have children? Okay. Will you have children? Why? I mean, yeah, I understand. Good luck on that front. Imagine you're walking with your 2-year-old, and your 2-year-old has never experienced ice cream. Okay. And so looks at other kids, and they're having ice cream, and they're enjoying what they're having. And so looks at you and says, Mom, what is it that? Say, ice cream. Well, can I have some? Sure. The first thing is curiosity. Okay. That's the driving force. So your kid pushes you and pushes you. And even though you don't have very much money, it's your child, right? You fear the consequences of not giving your child a bucket of ice cream. So that fear inspires you to get a second job, to make some more money. So next time you're in the street, you'll go to Baskin Robbins, get him a scoop. The child, for the first time, experiences ice cream and says, man, this is beautiful. And then says, can we go to Safeway and get some more? Okay. Now, as an adult, as the mother, you know that having too much ice cream is just bad. You know, diarrhea and stomachache and being a mom, having stayed up all night. These are not fun, pleasurable things to go through. So you get the bucket of ice cream, you guys get home, you say, can I get a tiny scoop? You say, yeah, sure. On a cone? Absolutely. Then you say, I'm going to take a shower. You just sit here and watch, what is that movie on Bluey? You've seen Bluey? It comes from Australia, funded by the government. Great show. If you as a parent want to feel bad about the sort of parent you are, watch Bluey. You know, it's this Freudian superego. It makes you feel shitty as a parent, okay? Huh? It's about kids and parents. I mean, it's like, if you've never been to Paradise, that's the show you need to watch. That's how parents and kids are in heaven. Yeah, I mean, they're all dogs, but who cares, you know? So, you should watch it. Yeah. And so you turn to your kid and you say, watch Bluey, I'll be right back. And you go take a shower, okay? And you come out like an hour later, and there is something strange in the kitchen. The freezer is open. Did I forget to close the door? You know, you close it and you say, well, wait a minute. Let me just look at the ice cream bucket. You look inside the bucket and it's empty. You just got it. It's like a 50-gallon bucket of ice cream, nothing in it. So you go to your kid and say, was anyone in the house? No. Did you go to the kitchen? No. No kitchen. Where did your child learn how to lie? Well, you know, sometimes you would tell your kid not to throw temper tantrums at Safeway, and she came to experience the volume of your voice going higher, and that jolted her a little bit. It frightened her. And so she understands that when you become angry, she becomes fearful of you because you become a beast, no longer a mother. And so you realize that because she fears you becoming angry, she has no choice but to lie. Okay. But your fear is justified. Your fear is justified because, your anger is justified because you know something that she doesn't. While you're having ice cream, you're consumed by pleasure. And when you're consumed by pleasure, you're intoxicated. Okay, and when you're intoxicated, you become blind. You can't see, you can't touch, you can't taste. You're just on autopilot, you're going, you know. And then 10 minutes later, as your stomach begins to be in pain, you say, man, I knew I shouldn't have so much. But that's not something your child knows, you know. Okay? And you realize sometimes you cause fear in your child as a protective mechanism. Okay? Now, there is another aspect of fear, which is I'm your boyfriend, I drink too much, I come home and I'm abusive. And you realize that I told you I'm going to come home at 7, it's 10 o'clock, and I'm wobbling around. I'm a little drunk. And you know that whenever I'm drunk, I'm verbally, physically, emotionally abusive. So what you do, you become fearful of your own safety. And out of this fear, you go to your room, you lock the door. That fear protects you. Okay. Now, and I guess the point I'm trying to make in all these analogies is the following. Everything for us under the sun is like a tool. If you happen to be insightful, if you happen to have some wisdom, if you happen to have some experience about you, you will use fear in the right way. What is your name? Carolina. Look, I need you to pass this class, not because I like you. I need to pass this class because I am an immigrant, okay? and I didn't take school seriously, and I didn't take money seriously, and I didn't take society seriously and the power it has seriously. And I thought that if I was to go to school, I'll be educated. But school isn't for that, okay? I don't know your life, I don't know you, and I don't really care for you or your life. All I know is that in this culture, if you have no money, if you have no school, you'll be trashed, okay? And from one immigrant to another, or from one human to another, my point is this. I need to create enough fear inside you so that you could carve out about 2 hours of your day to sit, listen, think, and write to get a passing grade. That's my job. You're not going to learn much in this class. In fact, no class is going to give you that much learning. It's all bumper stickers. Your task is to simply graduate from Laney, get yourself to good. Not East Bay, even though it's good, but a school with a big name, 4-year school. Bachelor's degree, it's no longer enough, unless it's computer science from Berkeley, where you can be hired at Google, get paid $200,000 a year, okay? Get yourself a master's degree. How old are you? 21. If you do things the right way, and by that I mean if there is enough fear inside you, and that fear, every time you go against it, it'll produce guilt, okay? If I'm your dad, and you come to me and say, Dad, I'm dropping out of school, it means you don't fear me enough. Which means that the only path you offer me is for me to get my suitcase, pack, put your stuff in there, grab your hair and throw you out. Huh?
Get your monkey ass out.
Yeah, okay? And then you go out there, you realize how expensive life is. And loneliness is not fun. Being an outcast of a family, that's no fun. And after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you will walk back in. You say, I'll go to school. Now that is a good fear. Okay? Now without that fear, you will disrespect me, you will do all sorts of things, waste my time, my energy, and my money. And in the end, you will accomplish nothing. Okay? You'll be 45 with a stupid man and a stupid life. Most likely, not all the time, but most likely. Okay? So if I'm able to create that fear inside you, by the time you're 30, you will have a PhD. That PhD becomes your savings account for the next 60 years of your life. You are a rich woman now. And when your brain is educated, your mind is educated, there's a good chance you will pick and choose your companions carefully. You will make sure you buy yourself in a house in an environment where your kids are not harmed as much. You know. So, when you're poor in fear, you become an individual. You know, you care for nothing, you respect nothing, you fear nothing. If you're rich with fear, right people, right things, it's a good inspirational force. When you talk about oh, he's not here. Religion. Once in a while, when you're sitting home on a Sunday, trying to watch a good movie, you hear a knock on the door. When you open the door, and there are 2 young men with bicycles, black pants, white shirts, a tie. They're 18 or 19 or 20, whether they're Mormon or a Moor woman or a Jehovah Witness or whatever. You know, you say, yes? Are you guys lost? No, I'm here to sell you Jesus Christ because I really love you and I care for your soul. Couple of problems. First, you know, you're 18. You don't know anything from anything. Okay? But nevertheless, there is, I think, people assume to know but lack the experience. And we're all guilty of this. There's a certain arrogance that lives inside us. You know, it's something that parents go through all the time, where a kid looks at a father or mother and says, You don't know better than me. I know what I'm doing. And the father says, listen, I dropped out of school. I know what's going on. No, my life is very different than yours. And all you do as a parent is give them the finger, get the fuck out, or you happen to be slightly more eloquent.
No, you don't. Get your punk ass on then. What you tell them?
Jesus Christ, man. Or yeah, like that. Get your punk ass out. Period. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I know your son. Now, sometimes you walk into life and you realize that your opponent is Mike Tyson in his 20s. And you want to fight him. But you realize that he has far too much power than you do. If you're stupid, you will fight him. And you're stupid because you don't fear him. If you are wise, if you look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I weigh 110 pounds. He weighs like 200 pounds. You look at my bicep, nothing. You look at his, it's like Godzilla. And your awareness creates the right kinds of fear about you. And the moment he throws you a punch, you just fall to the canvas. He hasn't even hit you. But you fall and you just don't get up. Okay. You and I are people of color. If you see ice on the road, it'd be stupid to say to yourself, I have all my documents. You're talking about people who are irrational, people who are drunk with power. It doesn't matter if you were born here. It doesn't matter what documents you have in your wallet. Change your path. Go a different direction. Because you have no power against them. These are brutes. They're crude. If a 20-year-old has the power and is willing to handcuff a 94-year-old man and ship him back to India, you're nothing. To stop yourself from doing evil, you have to have an element of conscience. That you have to feel something. And in the absence of that, it's open season. So fear is good. You should fear failing this class and other classes. In the absence of fear, you'll work at Home Depot. Not a bad thing, but as a young woman, you eventually want to have a family. You don't want to find yourself a partner at Home Depot, making $25 an hour, and then God forbid have a kid or two, possibly twins. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I understand. You're right.
They have said it right now, like, he ain't lying. You better listen.
Or your punk ass is out, period.
Jordan cost $250, $500. For real.
That's not funny either. People actually talk like that.
Okay, anyone else?
It is.
Yeah.
Compare schools to foreign nations.
Right.
Would you elaborate on that? What your views on that? How it was called humanities and Bible stories, or what's your argument?
So it's a really good question, and so let me approach it in a slightly kinky way. I know you wouldn't like that. And then we'll make it a bit more substantive. And by kinky, I don't really mean kinky. I just mean, it's not going to be pornographic or anything. So look. When you and I are born, laughing and giggling and being curious, and just walking around breaking things, stealing things, they're organic and natural. We don't understand proper ownership. We just think that, you look at something, it looks good, and you go touch it, okay? Let's say you're 17 or 18, you've never had a boyfriend, and I'm 18, 19, I've never had a girlfriend, and you and I meet. And we are both very innocent, and we come from a relatively, just say, religious background, where we were both forbidden from dating. You've never experienced love, and neither have I. I'm a man, you're a woman. Men and women approach love very, very differently, okay? Men and women approach sex very differently, which is very different, okay? But what has united us is mutual attraction. I get to know you, get to know me in a very superficial way, and 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks later, what blossoms again organically, simply because you and I spend time together. That's it, spend time together, okay? Having ice cream together, watching movies together, having popcorn together, merely being close to each other physically. No sex, physically close. One day I realize I'm in love with you, and you realize you're in love with me. Love makes you creative. It makes you a poet, okay? It makes you a wanderer. There's a good amount of fear inside you now. Now you have fantasies, you have hopes, you have dreams. There is faith. There is trust. That's what we have. Okay? That opens a lot of doors towards now physical intimacy, i.e. sex. And there is magic in the sex that you're having. Why? Because all I think about is you. All I feel about is you. And the only place I want to be is around you. So my body, mind, and emotions are just about you. The Trinity is complete. The circle is full for me, as they are for you. So body, mind, soul together. So when you and I physically grind bodies together, it's not just our bodies. Our emotions are intimate and our thoughts are intimate. That is magic. There is no higher place to go. Then something awful happens. And it happens, it doesn't matter who you are and what you are. As you and I spend more and more time together, you find me less interesting, and I find you less interesting as well. Which means that we're not going to have conversations as often. We're not going to have sex that has our minds and emotions. It's just be body and then mind, then body and then emotions, and after a while it's just body, no mind, no emotions. And though our bodies are together, I'm thinking about Angelina Jolie. Okay? And I'm thinking about the fact that we don't have money for rent. Okay? And now what you have is just bestiality, two animals grinding flesh together. Right? Now, consider that to be being expelled from the Garden of Eden. Love was alchemy. It was magic. You were enough for me in life, and I was enough for you in life. And the car was our home, and it was beautiful. And a cup of water was all that we needed. As our love diminishes, a car is no longer enough. A cup of water is no longer enough. Bread is no longer enough. Now you fancy other things, more elaborate, more expensive. So, and I can't really tell you at what point we came together and we said, maybe it's time to create a philosophy that argues human beings have a soul. Part of it maybe had to do with the fact that, look, there are moments you catch yourself, despite not having very much money. You see a homeless man, and you look into his eyes, and all of a sudden you're consumed by empathy. And even though, again, you don't have very much money, you give him a 20. As you're driving away, you say, I only had $25. This 20 was supposed to take me all the way to next week, okay? And what you experience about yourself is there is this moment where this human part of you that is transactional. You come to this class not because you like me and not because you want wisdom and not because you like religion. You come to this class because you need this as a unit to transfer to San Francisco. You don't get together with anyone because you love them or because you know them. Loneliness is tough. Being alone is tough. Not being able to share your food with another human being is tough. You're getting older, uglier, smellier. It's not a bad thing to have a companion. So everything about us is transactional, but this time, you put your hand in your pocket, you give him 20. You don't even expect a fucking thank you. Now that makes you an angel. You don't care about future. You don't care about the past. There is no fear about you. All you are is this bundle of empathy and compassion and generosity. You are Jesus Christ in that moment. Time passes. You become a bit more rational, a bit more sober. Now you become human. Now you say, you know that piece of shit, I give him a 20, he didn't say thank you. So this idea of being expelled from the Garden of Eden, I think at some point, all of us, regardless of who you are, what you are, whether you're religious or a pagan or an atheist, none of those things matter. You catch yourself during these moments where you're more than just you. In the Islamic tradition, there is this beautiful saying by Muhammad, which is, if you ever want to experience paradise, you don't need to wait till you're dead. It's under the feet of mothers. I mean, if you examine the physical body of a mother, for kids, it's like a pillow and a bed. It's a place of nourishment and comfort. You know, a man sees this and says, man, you know, these kids have taken away my wife from me. You know? And so then you realize that at least that's how things used to be, okay? You have a woman who has got 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. She is the queen of her house, which means that house has to be tidy. The enormous patience it requires to raise kids while men are out, you know, and you realize all the qualities that we attribute to religion, i.e. God, exist in a mother or in a woman. At a certain point, frustration enters. She gets expelled. At a certain point, she says, I have a voice in life and I want to live out my life. She gets expelled. That's how things are. There is a guy, I don't know if you've heard his name, probably not, Schleiermacher. Some piece of shit around some century. He had mentioned that our concept of God is made in this way. You create this fantasy inside your head, it's called God. Okay? And what do we give God? If you're in the Islamic tradition, God has 100 names. Okay? 99 of those names are known. One remains hidden. Of the 99s, what you have is, for example, compassion. Well, what is compassion? All of us in this class have expressed compassion. God also has wrath or anger. But it's not an anger that's abusive. It's an anger that educates you. Kind of like Carolina. Stay in school. Do the essays. I will call your mom otherwise. Okay? And so he argued that, look, the problem with human compassion is it comes and it goes. It's not stable. It's not constant. It's not solid. It's not something you can depend on. Okay? If we can create an image named God, grab all these wonderful things that you and I as human beings do once in a while and throw them up. And then imagine that God will be generous, not just for today, but all the time. His anger is not malicious. It's always for the right thing and the right people and the right time. And now we give God these absolute concepts. And so what that does for us is that you find that you exercise generosity at 10 o'clock, at 10:15, you're no good. And you catch yourself being no good. Then guilt and shame come about. And these are like religious emotions. And then you go to church and you cry and you scream and you say, you know what? I was expelled from grace. I want back. Then you go out again and you give $20 to another. Yeah, if this was a religion class, I would go more, but it's not. Yeah. No. Abi.
It's safe to say that So like as humans, like we we have it and then we just don't. Like 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 for me, for example, like religion. Like what happens if we didn't have religion? Would people be more or less moral?
I think if you live in society, there's a hierarchy. It's kind of like if you have a if you have children, you know, what you realize is that because they have no money, they come to you. Because they have certain needs, they come to you, and suddenly you realize the moment you have children, there is the father, there is the mother, or mother or father, or both equal, and then there are the kids. And the weaker kids goes to the one who is a bit more privileged. But even if your like brother or sister happen to be privileged, they also suffer from some poverty where they need to come to you. So if you want to live in a community, ultimately, is that there are certain laws, do's and don'ts. It's kind of like this class. You don't need to be religious to be in this class. What you need is you need to have been socialized well. Your parents must have trained you not to talk out of place. If you want to ask a question, raise your goddamn hand. If you want to talk to people, be respectful. In the absence of that, what do you have is savagery. And again, you don't need religion for that. It's just the way that we need to be to survive life. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then Eve. Yeah. Eva, right? Eva?
You talk about like pursuing education, but how is it worth living around like
Who cares? That's. Can I be honest?
Please.
Americans look at everything the wrong way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You are young. You have another like 80 years to go. So what if you're in debt 100,000? It's like a mortgage for a house. But just because you're in debt, or just because you may be in debt, you want to what? Drop out of school and do what?
so I just mean like the examples that you're giving are like that financial.
It's okay. If you want to go to school in India, you need to be a millionaire. If you want to go to school in Iran, you need to be a millionaire. Here, it's almost free. The other thing is this. Look, America is also a very strange land in the sense that you could have a hot dog stand and make a good living from it. That's not what happens in Europe. That's not what happens in the Middle East. That's not what happens in the Near East. Okay? America offers you a lot of different options. You know, you could be a Steve Jobs. Most of the things I say about education is biased. Biased in the sense that I come from a very poor background. That even though culturally we may be rich, physically we are just poor. Nobody has any money. It's a third world country. And so the highest thing that people value in that part of the world is education. The other thing about education is no one can take it away from you. Once you have a master's or a bachelor's or a PhD, it's just yours. You can go anywhere on this planet and show them those documents and you'll get a relatively good job, you know. If you think you're exempt from the slings and arrows of life, if you think that you have this talent, it's kind of like what my football students used to think. You know, when I first got a job at Laney, I had like 30, 40 football players in my classes. And they all imagine that they're going to be taken by 49ers or Broncos or this or that. And they all end up losers. I mean, many of them. You know, what was your question?
About
Yeah. Look, at a certain point, you either have a choice of renting a place or owning your own home. If you want to rent a place, all you got to do is pay last month and the deposit, and that's it. It's $5,000 out of your pocket. And anytime you want to leave, you can leave. You can be a nomad. You could be a hippie, just to pay the penalty for breaking the lease and go your way. If you buy a house, the story is different. If you buy a house, the problem is, let's say you want to buy a house that's $500,000. Well, you got to put a down payment for at least $150,000 to $200,000 down. That means you have to be disciplined enough to save some money, which these days kids can't do. Okay. Second, your relationship with money has to change. Third, once you buy a house, just in case you decide to leave, no one's going to give back your money. And if you read Deuteronomy, you got to file for bankruptcy. And your name is tarnished for the next 7 years. Okay? The other thing about buying a house, you can no longer be a nomad. It's your house. You have to turn it into a home. And just in case you get a boyfriend who's in Nebraska, you're going to con him into moving to Oakland, close to where you live and where your parents live. And just in case you get these whimsical emotions that I don't like my place, fine, then sell it for a cheaper price. Take the loss. The point I'm trying to make, whenever you become dedicated to anything, it civilizes you. And education is that. And the other thing is, anything of value, you got to pay for it. You're okay with a C? Just write a C essay. You want an A? Man, you got to sit, you got to think. And you got to edit your essays. That's how it is. Yeah.
Question for you in reference to education. I have a friend who's Nigerian. I've known her 30 years. She's in Canada now, but when she got married, she had children. All of her children are grown with the exception of one. Her oldest daughter, when she got out of high school and she started college, she wanted to be a social worker. And my friend said, no.
Yeah.
You have to become either a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Is that a cultural
Yeah,
thing?
it is. If you come to our gatherings, all of the people who gather, doctors, engineers, we rarely invite people who are divorced. We don't invite people who drink, who smoke. These are just cultural things.